Welcome back to Medora Minutes, a Bible study designed to help you start your week with the Lord and in His Word. This week we're looking at Genesis 45, verses 1 through 8, and Genesis 50, verses 15 to 21. I've given it the title, What Forgiveness Looks Like. Forgiveness is hard. I don't know anyone that is really good at it, except perhaps Joseph. Joseph had a lot to forgive, a lot of mistreatment, and he shows no intention of ever trying to get even with anyone, no evidence of any vengeance that he ever sought. By the time his brothers arrived in Egypt at the time of famine, Joseph was ready for them. His heart was clear. We always look at forgiveness as being something we have to do. What does it look like? Well, we have to give in. We have to give up. We have to lose. That's hard. But when we look at forgiveness through those eyes, we're looking through our own eyes and at a very short spectrum of time. Perhaps it would help if we looked at forgiveness through God's eyes and through His perspective of eternity. Joseph, of his own volition, decided to forgive his brothers. Of his own volition, he decided not to seek revenge. So what does forgiveness look like then in Joseph's life? Well, first of all, forgiveness looks like he gained back his brothers. If he was looking for vengeance, he would never have had his brothers as brothers back. He gained back his father as his father, not just as the father of Joseph, but the father of the whole family. If Joseph had sought vengeance on his brothers for the slavery they sold him into, his father's relationship with Joseph would have been markedly different. But when they came to Egypt, they came as a family. When they came to Egypt, forgiveness looked like Joseph could provide for his family. He put them up in a good land, in the land of Goshen, and provided for their well-keeping, for their livelihood. What that meant was that going forward, Joseph was seen as the patriarch of the clan. He would never have had that if he had destroyed his brothers in vengeance. For Joseph, forgiveness looks like his mind is free. He's not looking at the past. He's looking forward to the future. This allows him to be a very trusted servant of Pharaoh, to do a good job. And finally, there's one thing that forgiveness looks like in Joseph's life that Joseph didn't live to see. Because of the forgiveness of Joseph, his family came to Egypt as a family, but left as a mighty nation. They then were able to go back to the land of Canaan, conquer it, and continue to grow as a nation. And finally, to be the birthplace and the family and the nation of Jesus the Christ, our Savior. None of that would have happened if Joseph had required vengeance. What does forgiveness look like? Of course, there are things we have to do. But forgiveness, from God's perspective, is all of the positives that can come from that. In Matthew chapter 18, verses 15 on through the end of the chapter at verse 35, Jesus makes it very clear that forgiveness is required of us. But then let's remember to go back to the story of Joseph and see that forgiveness is blessing. When we forgive of our own free will, as Joseph did, we open the doors of blessing in our lives. I'd encourage you to meditate on this over this coming week. Again, our Bible passages were Genesis 45, verses 1 through 8, and Genesis 50, verses 15 to 21. I also mentioned Matthew 18, from verse 15 to the end of the chapter. God willing, we'll talk again next week. Thank you for listening.